And now on to the task at hand, which is to discuss more ways for all of you and for me, even the older folks play a role in this too, how we can help fill the gaps in the planet's energy system, whether there are places where there is a grid or places where there'll never be a grid. There are clearly places on this planet where communities will not have what we grew up with, just as with cell phones now. The norm is now not having a grid for phone technology. So the norm for energy in many places will be local, distributed, connected when it needs to be. And so I'm going to bring up three people who are leaders in trying to pursue ways to foster, and basically they demonstrate innovation, but it's not just technological innovation. And you'll see in our conversation that we're not just talking about better photochemistry. They're talking about better personal chemistry. How do you make an innovation spread? How do you innovate behavior as it relates to energy and electricity? In my house, I'm still the only guy who's turning off the lights when around people leaving rooms, and I would love to figure out a way to make that the norm in my own house, and it's still challenging. So social innovation matters as well. So I'd like to call up here first Eden Full, Director of Rosenthal Technologies. And you'll see Eden is involved in both the technology and the entrepreneurship and the personal innovation. Right, so take your seat. And Michael Mazga Ankar, co-founder of the Mazda Collective in India. And one of his pursuits is Gandhian engineering. We will be talking about that. I think I know what it means, I'm sure. And so here he is. He snuck quietly on. And from Kenya, from Africa, from Kenya, Evans Wadongo, founder and executive director of Sustainable Development for All in Kenya. So just because... Hello? Oh, no, it's there. I'm a musician, and so I know how to eat the mic. So let's start with you, Eden. I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey here. The technology, you said things are about to roll off of assembly lines pretty soon, right? So just tell us a little bit about Rosenthal and how this came about.
Sure. So my name is Eden. Hi. I'm developing a device called the Sunscooter, and what it does is essentially you imagine your solar panel kind of like a seesaw, and you have a set volume of water at one end of the solar panel, and throughout the entire day, that volume of water is slowly leaking out, and so that changes the weight imbalance, and it causes your solar panel to rotate. And when you rotate solar panels, it optimizes their energy collection by up to 40% on a really, really good day. On most days, you get more like 25%. And so this is really important, particularly in some of these areas that we're working in, just because you want to get as much juice out of these panels as you can. And what I've essentially done is found a really simple way to do it without using motors or electricity. And I guess I've been working on this for quite a while now, and so I'm taking some time off of college to work on this full time.
Well, what I loved about in reading the notes about you is you're taking gap years with an S on the end. Does that mean, are you going to go back? Or
I'm actually
is there
going
time
back to school in the fall.
Oh, you will be? Wow, that's pretty cool. That's quite a gap.
I think it was worth it, though. If we really want to get stuff done in the world, you have to devote all your time to it.
Just quickly, what prompted you to step off of the academic assembly line in that way, at that moment? What
so I was studying mechanical engineering, and I felt like I couldn't really find meaning in the classes that I was taking. And as some of you might know, like the freshman and sophomore year classes aren't very exciting, and I felt like I wanted to feel more passionate about the classes I would be taking in junior year, where you actually get to build stuff in the shop and work on projects. So I thought, why not take some time off of school and try building my own things and just see if mechanical engineering is actually for me.
Have you ever been to the Exploratorium in San Francisco?
Yeah.
Like, did you always want to build stuff?
Yeah, I built my first desktop solar.
Are you a maker?
Car when I was 10. Yeah.
Desktop solar. I interrupted.
Desktop solar car. So that's how I first got into solar.
When you were 10. Okay. Onward and upward. So, Michael, Gandhian engineering. Just tell us a little bit of your backstory. What brought you here, and what's your mission in life?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Michael, and my background is I grew up in a big city, but I realized that I was very privileged to be able to get education in a country where most students were not privileged enough to go to school. And so I thought it was very important that people who learn share their skill and knowledge with the people who cannot. And so I moved to live in a village. And because I was always also a maker and a doer, I was interested in engineering. So that is the knowledge I share. And I live in a hilly region in a wildlife sanctuary, and I work with the indigenous people there. It's an indigenous peoples populated region, and I work there on many different issues, one of which is generating local electricity and lighting with that.
What brought you to that particular place, that particular reserve? What's it like there? Just give us a quick snapshot. Is this elephants or?
No, it's leopards and wolves and snakes. In India, there are a few communities which are extremely disadvantaged, and the indigenous peoples are one of those. Dalits are the other community that's also very disadvantaged. And I had traveled in many different parts of India. In fact, from the western border to the eastern border, close to Myanmar, and learned that in most indigenous regions, there were very few people living and working there. Most people would actually be living outside in a city and then going in what they call the field, and that itself is a statement saying that your place is actually not worth living for me, so I'll not live with you, but I'll tell you how to live, I'll teach you how to live. And that did not make sense to me. So that was one of the big reasons why we went there. And this is one of the communities where there was no other group, individual or organization from outside working in that region. And that's what brought us to that community.
I have one more quick question before we move on to Evans. And this is about cultural divides. We have a huge divide in our country between rich and poor, urban and sort of poor, and urbane and poor, I guess is the way to put it. But in India, I think it's actually worse in some ways. I remember I wrote a book about the Amazon rainforest in 1990, and at that time, Brazil was described as Belgium in India, a rich, small culture inside a giant, sprawling, poor place. But now India is Belgium in India. So what brought you out of that? If you were in an educated kind of, I don't know, middle class background, what for you was the thing that made you look outward?
I would say there were two major things. One was that when I was growing up, I went to youth camps where I learned about lopsided planning for economic planning, lopsided regulatory infrastructure for all the various activities going on, and also the importance of development in rural areas as against only in urban areas. In India, it has always been like that urban areas receive huge amounts of subsidy in transport, in water supply, in any infrastructure, but rural areas do not get any of that. So that was one. That was the reason there was some motivation or logic behind moving to a rural region. But the other was also that my parents have worked for 50 years with Gandhian philosophy, with colleagues of Gandhi, and that introduced me to a different way of living and a different way of working. And that is also something that gave an impetus to these ideas.
We'll get back to Gandhi and engineering in a minute. So Evans, when I was reading your background, it reminded me a lot of the background of the Secretary General of the United Nations, because he described recently in a speech a year ago how he grew up in the post-war era in Korea with a kerosene lamp, and then a candle was a very special thing. He only got a candle to do his homework by when it was the final exams were coming. And you grew up, again, as many, billions of people still do, with kerosene light being the norm. But then you came out of that environment toward getting a college degree and now developing a group called Sustainable Development for All. So tell us a little bit about the group and then how you got to where you are.
As you've described,
maybe you'll be the next Secretary General.
I would love to. As you've described, really, I grew up in that situation, but where, because it's normal in most developing countries where you walk to school, your school does not have electricity, your home does not have electricity, you don't have running water, and all that. But what was interesting is that we had these huge, budgets going towards projects in whether it's energy, other sectors. But the effect was not trickling down to the people in my own village and in so many other villages. So I was worried, where is the disconnect? Why is it that there's so much funding going towards projects in energy and even poverty elevation? But I never saw anything changing really in all the years I lived in my village. So I wanted to do something that is localized, something that is simple and doesn't require a lot of knowledge to do it. And that's what drove me. That I saw a lot of kids dropping out of school, and so when I was in college in my first year, I developed a simple solar lamp that can be made by like young people who've never gotten a chance to go to college, but it can be made in a very simple way with a lot of recycled materials.
Is it the kind of thing that just gives you enough illumination to last through one night? A small, simple device?
Yes, it's just a simple solar lamp that is that you charge in the sun during the day, and then at night you're able to use it. And of course, you can also use it to charge mobile phones.
Back in the village, did you go back to the village much, where you came from originally?
Yes, I started off in my own village, and I gave out the first few lamps in my own village. And now I'm working in a lot of villages across Kenya and Malawi, and we actually train some of the young people from those villages to be able to make these lamps, because we want again, the technology is so simple, and the essence we make it simple is that they can be able to redesign, to come up with what is suitable to their own conditions. And that's really what we want to achieve, to make something that can be replicated easily in many parts of the world.
A colleague of mine, Elizabeth Rosenthal, in 2009 wrote an article where she went to rural Kenya and did a piece about the outsized power of having a little bit of electricity from a solar panel in a village setting, where there was a woman who was the centerpiece of this article who was tired of having to go into town to charge her cell phone. In many parts of the world, it's normal to have a cell phone but not have electricity to charge your phone. And so she invested, I think, $50 in a rooftop solar panel, and then she found she had excess watt minutes, and she started selling power to her neighbors to charge their phones. And then they started putting her out of business because they all said, this is cool, and they started buying their own solar panels. And there's the power, the outsized power of having a little bit of electricity in places that have none seems remarkable, especially because we're bathed in electricity here. And have you seen that transformational capacity? And actually, I'll ask you all that.
Yeah. Actually, just having a little bit of power really makes a big difference, especially for me, I'm dealing with people who basically earn probably about maybe $1 a day or $2 in a day. And so these kind of people, whatever they earn every day, they have to spend it on food, on how they can get energy for lighting, then all the basic needs really, healthcare, everything else. And so if you can be able to eliminate part of their daily expenditure, you really make a big difference in those people's lives. And so my program, what we do is we train women who have gotten these lamps to be able to save the money that they would have initially spent on kerosene. And after a couple of months, they're able to use those savings to set up a small business. And of course, now once they have this small business, they can be able to afford even other technologies and even better education for their kids, better healthcare, and all those.
I know in India there's been issues with subsidies for kerosene. Are you battling? Is kerosene cheaper than it should be? In a sense, does that conflict with what you're trying to do?
What's interesting is that, like in Kenya, kerosene is about $1 per liter, which is really expensive, considering that a family uses about maybe 1 liter of kerosene. They use it for probably 3 days. And so it's very, very expensive. And then the government has actually removed taxes on kerosene, but it's still very expensive. So one thing we've been trying to push with the government in terms of changing the policy is that the government is not getting any revenue on kerosene, but still still kerosene is expensive. So we've been pushing them to spend more money into renewable energy technologies as opposed to giving more subsidies to kerosene.
That same kind of tension is here in the United States, trying to eliminate subsidies for successful fossil fuels and sustain them for the young technologies.
Yes.
So Eden, I want to come back to you with this question of the big news is you're about to move toward manufacturing these sun soluters, but I assume you see it more as you're looking at a business model that's more than just the panel or the device. What's your vision for how this would play out, in an ideal situation?
So we're actually talking to a number of partners. Some of them are from places like South Africa, Indonesia, the Philippines, Uganda. And what we found is that these people are interested in the Sunscooter, and they're like, okay, it's great. We're going to want to buy the initial, 10 or 100 units, depending on what scale their project is at. But then they're like, but we want to be able to make these Suncooters ourselves after. So can you teach us that? And so this kind of has made me realize that potentially our organization should move towards either open sourcing the technology or providing technical support and resources and licensing our intellectual property to larger organizations that are doing this. And so we've crunched the numbers actually, and we've decided that if an organization is manufacturing more than 1,000 Suncooters per month, then it's worthwhile for them for us to receive a royalty from them in exchange for them using our intellectual property.
And really, just to add on what she's talking about, and I was glad that I met her in Kenya. And if you look at how we can be able to move a lot of people, a large number of people, who, especially in rural areas who are poor, to be able to access energy, it's important to look at solutions that can be made locally. And so whichever kind of solution you make, it should be a solution that can be that you can train these people for them to be able to make locally using materials they can also try and find locally, and that way more and more people will be able to access these kind of technologies. Or else we shall continue developing technologies that only the middle class can afford. And so you walk into a village, you find a teacher. He still lives in the village. He's surrounded by so many homes which are very poor, but because he's a teacher, at least he's employed, he'll afford that technology. So in one home they have this technology they're using, in the 10 neighboring homes they can't afford it. So that's really what has been happening. And then we on the bigger picture we'll say we have these technologies working in rural villages in Africa and Asia and other parts of the world.
I have to ask how you intersected in Kenya. How did that happen?
I think a friend introduced us, and since we're working on similar things and I was passing through Nairobi, we just met up.
By the way, they're both on Twitter. I'm trying to convince Michael to get on Twitter too. And it's just their names without a space or anything. Eden Full and Evans with an S, Wadongo. So do follow them. And I'm at Revkin if you don't know that already. So back to India and back to Michael. Tell us a little bit about Gandhian philosophy and engineering, and maybe reacting a little bit to what you heard here. How much of this is about distributing the engineering, meaning making it the capacity in the communities so you're not just parachuting in with something? Is that what you're talking about, or is it broader than that? Could you fill us in?
Yeah, well, there is no parachuting as it is. Essentially what we try to do is we find what the people really want, but then develop or find a solution that continuously interacting with people. And very often we come up with something that we actually never had in mind, but it came from the people. And actually I would use an example from our work. One of the activities we do in the wildlife sanctuary is preventing soil erosion through building very small stone dams. And it all began with a conversation with farmers during a drought year, and people did not have enough food in the house, and we were talking what we could do and why did this happen, and why did not we have reserves of grain in our own homes, and did we have them before and not, and so on. And from that talk came out the fact that in an earlier time people were making these small stone dams which was preventing soil erosion. But because the economic situation had changed and people had to migrate to urban regions seasonally to find money, then they stopped making these stone dams, and because of that the soil productivity went down because of the erosion, and now we had no more reserve of grain in their own homes. And that is how we began this making of these dams with the farmers, and repropagating that technology that actually was invented by the farmers there. And the land is so hilly that actually you cannot do farming without these small dams. They're very small dams, like 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet tall. They are not huge, and they can be made by local people, and that's what we are doing now. And in every step of this activity, we have actually learned from them. We've added a little bit of civil engineering to the fact that what size the base should be and what is the relation between the height and the base and stuff like that. But apart from that, that's not a technology that we developed. And we never would have thought of that as a solution to a drought situation, But the solution has come from the people, and just because we live there, they feel comfortable with us, we feel comfortable communicating with them, and from informal talks, this is something that has come about.
I've got to intrude with something I just blogged on a couple of days ago, which is Digital Green. This is a group in India, actually, as well, who set up essentially, it's an extension to the extension service. So you have an agricultural extension service with a couple of agents or social workers in a province, and they go out and they teach a few people how to grow rice more productively, or maybe how to use energy more efficiently. And then what they've set up is a YouTube, essentially a YouTube, Facebook-ish, YouTube-ish clearinghouse for locally generated films about this exactly kind of thing, where a community will make a video of a farmer explaining how he built a dam, and then that gets seen because again, cell phone technology, and there's enough internet capacity dribbling into rural places that you can start to say, oh, it's the same kind of conversation that used to take place at what we call the Grange Hall in the United States in the 1800s, where farmers would come in, say, hey, you're using that shovel? Oh, that's interesting. But now it's happening through the internet, and I don't know whether any of you see the potential, especially in rural places, for energy innovation also to spread that way. And what's really interesting is they found that the thing that makes it effective is it's not me doing a video on .earth. It's someone on the ground in a community learning something, and then that information being passed to someone else who's similar but doesn't have that idea yet. I don't know if you've seen that, the electronic version of that kind of conversation happening yet, but I think it's something to think about. So we're going to start thinking about your questions, because we're going to transition soon to audience questions for the panel. But I wanted to see, again, if you had any questions for each other so far. Obviously, you guys have intersected already. And is there anything about what Eden has laid out that sounds like it isn't a good fit for what you see in the field? If you had something to warn her about, what would it be?
That's an interesting question.
Well, I'm asking them. What would be the one thing you would caution her about?
Sorry. I just wanted to say that I think it's very good to develop technical solutions, but a technical solution is a very small part of a social change process. And we have to be very aware of that, and to find whether what we have in mind fits into that overall picture. And if not, then what do we need to change? And this is something both scientists, technicians, engineers miss out on totally, because they think that engineering knowledge or technical knowledge is supreme, and that is what is going to solve all the problems, which it doesn't, as we see in real world.
I think I have to agree with you on that, because as much as I did my undergraduate degree in engineering, really what I do has nothing to do with engineering, because I designed the solar lamps when I was in my first year, and actually my first semester in college, so I had not learned anything really. But what's really important is look at the social problem that you want to address, and then look at what can I do. Then you will find that most of the things have nothing to do with the technical part. It's about how you manage, what kind of distribution system you're able to deploy that will make sure that you create an impact. And what Michael is doing is really interesting. And if you compare with what we're doing, it's something that's there's a lot of synergy in it, because we are able to equip knowledge to women, the women in rural areas, and they can be able to use money that they've actually, these are money, it's like they don't need to get loans now. Like we are driving people who are giving microfinance to these women out of business, because they are able to save their own money and use it as startup capital to start small businesses. And interestingly, the businesses that they've been able to start are in agriculture, because again, one of the immediate problems is food security. So that's how, because they're more concerned about how they can get food, how they can get lighting, how they can get healthcare, and how they can get education. So you find that what they do normally surrounds all those basic needs that they want.
There's
Can I share a
yeah,
story?
you should. Of course, you should. Absolutely.
Cool. So I started building Sunscooters when I was like 16 or 17. I'm 21 now. And they started out using this design where I basically used bimetal coils to rotate solar panels. And it was essentially welding two types of metal together so that the different properties would cause them to expand when they're heated up. And so I was like really excited by this technical idea that I'd thought of. And then I went to Kenya actually for the first time after my freshman year of college to deploy this idea. And there were so many things that were wrong with it that I don't even know where to start. There were kids that would come and they would play with it and they'd take apart the thing, and then like the coils just weren't winding very well, and like there were all these things that just, I had all these preconceived notions about what the technology was going to be like and what these people needed, and like who was I to make those kinds of assumptions, right? I'm just some kid from Canada who just went there. And so I took the time to really, reevaluate, okay, what kinds of needs need to be met. A, I need to make it windproof. B, I need to make it childproof. And C, it needs to be a lot simpler. So
That's amazing.
And so I went back to the drawing board, and now the current design for the Sunscooter is actually substantially simpler. It uses a gravity-fed water device. So basically, by controlling that flow rate, like you can really easily tell if something's wrong with it. It's if the thing is leaking, it's because it's cracked. If there's a clog in the valve, you just have to blow on it and get the clog out. Like these are issues that anyone, even regardless of whether they went to engineering school, would be able to use in the real world. And so that was a really big lesson that I learned the hard way by actually going out there and trying something that didn't work. So definitely go out there, do an assessment trip before you actually deploy your technology. Or if you do, like make sure you go in with the understanding that it's probably not going to work, and that's totally okay.
I think something interesting is that I've noticed that a lot of people, like students, are trying to develop solutions, and they're focusing on developing countries really. But it's really important also to look at where you live. Solutions need to be adapted to any environment, because some of these problems are global and they affect everyone where you are, and so you find somebody is going to school maybe at Stanford, so he's developing a solution to be used in a village in Kenya, and they've never been to this village. They don't really know how the community is going to adopt it. So it's a big problem that is happening, and I'm pretty much sure that in this conference you've had a lot of people talking about doing stuff in Kenya and Africa, and you'll still continue hearing it. But to be honest, I work in villages across Kenya, and majority of this stuff don't work. I'll be honest with you, because they are developed with, you need to, when you're doing design, it needs to be the other way around. You need to look at what do the people want, what do the consumers want, then you're able to develop a solution based on that, but not developing a solution then thinking that it's going to work. And that's really something that I've found out, and that's, she's highlighted that she was able to learn that when she came to Kenya, which is really important.
I'm going to throw one more thought out before we turn to your questions. So this is about the reality that in most situations, electricity is not the thing you want. Electricity provides some service or some utility that you want, whether it's cooling something, whether it's moving something, whether it's heating something. And so there's a guy named Harish Hande, also in India, Hande, who I interviewed a couple times for .earth. So I did a piece with him during the Indian blackout about how the blackout was irrelevant for the 400 million people in India who have no electricity now. So like, what are all these people upset about? But anyway, he really, I was with him in Manila, out in a village outside of Manila in the Philippines, and we were looking, it was a camp, it was a resettlement camp for, and this is kind of a call out to all you engineers out there. It was a camp for resettling disaster victims from around the Philippines, 6,000 families, and they had retraining things, they had great stuff on motorcycle repair and welding and all this stuff. And he was walking around with me. He runs a company in India called Selco, which is focused on energy services, looking at a village, looking at the needs for energy and then solving them with renewable choices. And we were going through this camp, which was a great enterprise, but a lot of the tools they had were all high amperage. You know, the sewing machines were way overbuilt, and they were built for a world of the grid. They were built for a world of 220 or 110 volt power, and he was saying, you know, we need a new model for developing a huge market in tools, appliances, sewing machines that are designed for small electricity, for the kind of electricity that will be normal in big chunks of the world for at least the next 20 or 30 years. And so there's a huge opportunity there, and I think it's a business opportunity as well. For coming up with the ways, when you think of energy as a service, you're not just looking at the how to generate it, but how it's used and how to use it more efficiently as well. So there's some prospects there to think about. So now, who out there has a question for the group here? Maybe right here first. I'm going to try to do you in clusters just to save the microphone runner time.
Okay, so I guess my question is, how do you balance projects that create energy sources with the technical skills and training needed to go along with them? Because you can create a great solar panel that actually meets the needs of the community and everyone will adopt it there. But if you're not also giving them the education and training skills, then you're basically inhibiting an entire generation of mechanics, of engineers, electricians who can actually develop their own private sector and their own innovation in that community, which is really what would lead to long-term sustainability.
I will say briefly that Selco, the company I just mentioned, that's kind of how they operate. But now to the panel.
I think we are all, I'm talking about the people in this room and people like me, we are all in a hurry to find solutions, to provide solutions, and to develop solutions. I think what we need to do is to work with the community in finding solutions and using our knowledge to help the community learn how to make the solutions. And once they can make them, they can also maintain them and repair them. And this is, again, like her, I've learned this the hard way. We did a few projects, we totally failed at them. The first was an irrigation project and nobody wanted it the way we wanted to do it. And that taught us what not to do. And then when we made the first windmill in 2005, we started working on the design of a windmill or getting a windmill from 2001. But we ended up making a windmill in 2005, and we made it with 6 young people in the village. And now they can make more windmills, they maintain this windmill, and it has been going on, lighting 14 homes for all these years since 2005. And if we can do that, if we can take the time to do that with the community, then we can bring lasting change and we can bring lasting solutions. And so we have to, I think you have all the time in the world, but somehow we're all in a hurry to do too many things in too short a time, you know?
I think, even as for me, I've learned the same thing. What's going to change is really equipping people with just basic knowledge, and then they can be able to think for themselves, so that they can develop solutions that meet their standards. Like, as for me, we are actually able to teach young people in Malawi, students like who are in like 6th grade, how to make the solar lamps, and these are like orphans. Most of them are orphans from HIV/AIDS, and they're the ones now who are teaching adults right now about solar technology. And we started off with these young kids, and what they're doing right now is they're creating not just solar lamps now, they're creating solar cookers, they're creating other things, but they just needed that basic knowledge for them to believe that they can think for themselves.
There's another question, and actually let's just because we have 5 minutes left, let's do a lightning round. I want to hear 3 quick questions, and then they'll respond to them en masse.
So thank you all for being here. I'm curious how we can use renewable energy and sustainability efforts to engage and empower youth, and specifically, can we use these efforts to connect with the STEM education conversation?
So the education connection. Is there another one right nearby? Right there?
I was wondering how each of your projects, wherever you've done them or you plan to employ them, how not only does it meet the needs of the people that you're serving, but how it might change their behavior in the short term or long term in terms of their demands for the electricity and what they can do with it.
So actually, those are both kind of education related in the sense of how much of this can be incorporated into more formal teaching, and then how much of it is about teaching the person who's buying the technology? Any quick thoughts?
Yeah. So in terms of STEM education, that's actually something really important to me, and I'd love to hear your ideas on it later, but so far I've actually had the opportunity to go and speak at a couple of elementary schools, and I show them these photos of me building like the cars when I was their age, and I've been doing this for a while, and I think that it's entirely possible for younger students to be doing this at a younger age, and then by the time they reach a level of maturity, they have an understanding of what some of the international issues are, and then they can start creating solutions around that that are obviously going to have to be deployed on the ground. What was the second question?
Well, it was about sort of the consumer end of the technology.
Yeah. So for the Sunscooter, we actually have 5 running pilots right now. 2 in Kenya, 2 in Tanzania, and 1 in Uganda. And the intention is, because of the water filtration component of the Sunscooter, we want to see if there's a possibility of using almost the solar energy part to incentivize clean water usage and to improve global health. And so in that way, we're actually currently discussing with a couple of health organizations to measure this impact and to see if this clean water is almost being forced to have to produce clean water by pouring water through the Sunscooter to get the 40% more electricity. How much exactly does that incentivize them to be healthier?
That's really cool. Another couple of questions? Anyone? Because we're almost at the point for us to head to the tables and do the headbanging, brainstorming.
Thank you all for coming, and I'll keep my question brief, but does decentralized electrical grid, or does decentralized electricity require decentralized economies, and how would those co-evolve, or do they need to come hand in hand?
This is about the economics of this. Yes. Any quick thoughts? I have one, but I'll let you guys go first.
Do you want to go first?
No. Never.
I think that decentralized electricity generation is one part of an overall future scenario. I think the more important part is an autonomous economy, an economy that is self-sufficient, if not at a village level, then at least a regional level. And in that, it's very much part of the idea that decentralized generation of energy also encourages decentralized economy, decentralized production of goods and services, decentralized consumption of those goods and services, and so on. So it's very much part of the overall picture.
Yeah, I think if people are able to generate their own money to be able to invest in electricity projects or in energy projects, then at the local level, then you find that the adoption of these technologies is faster. So one of the things that is important is look at what is happening, for example, when companies are able to convert waste into electricity. So that way they're able to use the waste to get electricity, and that electricity is used in that particular region. And so you find that it's that way. It's the spread of electricity is faster.
Just one quick thing on that. Anyone here from Columbia University? Well, Modi, Vijay Modi, you might know Vijay. The Modi lab has come up with this system for micropayments for sort of micro amounts of electricity, which is what many households in rural Africa need, and it's actually all managed by computer. There's a sort of a central little solar charging device, and then an octopus of little wires going to houses in the village. And back at Columbia, they're monitoring those micropayments which are all done using the cell phone banking system. And so it doesn't all have to happen there in that sense, potentially. That's all still an early prototype, but go look for Modi Lab and solar, and you'll find an example where it's interfaced with the outside world as well, sort of the developing world. So I think it's time to say thank you to this amazing panel, and follow the two on Twitter, and look forward to seeing it. So now they're working in groups here. And I'm easy to find if you have questions for me, of course. Boy, I hope you all solved everything. Or at least have some ideas. This is kind of a wrap-up session to crystallize next steps. So I don't know what emerged for any of you in talking with people out there, maybe quickly from you all, ideas that you heard in that 3-minute flash of discussion, and then anyone from the audience as well. So is there any quick next step here?
Yeah, so I actually met someone who's doing a water filtration technology, so we're going to put water filters underneath the
Stand
Sunscooters.
up. I see you. Great, where are you at? What school are you at? Great.
Right here. So yeah, I think also if anyone was wondering, my email address is eden@sunscooter.com. Write me. I'd love to hear from you. I know what it's like to start out doing a project. I'm still starting out doing a project, but if there's any advice I can ever give, I'm here for you.
All 21 years of you. That's so cool. Any other quick thoughts from the podium?
I think there are lots of very great ideas in this room, and there's a lot of energy, and I'm very happy to be here because of that, and meeting all of you. And again, I think some of you are already begun doing that, spending time with community, learning from them, and modifying your own ideas based on that. And I hope that you keep on doing that, because that's the right path. And out of that will come a lot of good, I think, for the society. Thank you very much.
Great. Evans?
I think I see a lot of bright young people who are eager to change their own communities, to change the world, and that's really good. But in everything we do, we have to look at humanity first, and to try and look at what impact whatever we do will have on humanity. That's really, really important. And you can always keep the conversation going with me on Twitter, on Facebook. Just type my name. If you Google my name, you'll get my contacts, Evans Wadongo. And let's keep the conversation going. Thank you.
And maybe one way to do that is to have a customized hashtag. I love CGIU with the pound sign, but maybe ECGIU could be our hashtag for sustaining this conversation via Twitter. I'm just throwing that out there. To me, the hashtag is one of the great inventions of recent years. It was invented by Chris Messina. So that a hashtag, a pound sign in front of a word, is an invention. And I just want to end with the idea that invention is not just a panel or a device. It's an idea, and there's a lot of fresh ideas out here. And I think the more that we're interacting around them, the more potential there is for this to really become a flash flood of progress. So thank you all.